Thank you, Mr. President. This vote is a tricky vote for me. It's one I had to sleep on a little bit in terms of its content, and I'm glad that I had that opportunity to at least have one night of sleep to review this and think about the provisions in this 191-some-page bill. The tough vote comes really in that some of the policy highlights are things that many of us have been working hard for and fighting for quite a long time. Some of these policy initiatives that are included in this amended version also will impact people's lives negatively. And so the balance of that decision is tricky. I want to highlight, though, what I think is the most positive part of this legislation, which would be a critical, long overdue update and cost of living increase to our public school and state workers' retirement fund. For many, many years, people over 24 years, I believe it is, there has not been a cost of living adjustment for our retirees that worked for our state or in the public education system here in the Commonwealth. And sadly, some of the people that were waiting for this much needed increase aren't here today to see it happen because they've already passed away. So these are our oldest retirees, many of them living in poverty. So this is a good moment, but a late moment. This should have been done quite some time ago. But for the sake of saying this is a high point, this is the high point of this legislation, that people will have more coming in their monthly checks, and it also will give a cost of living increase to our municipal fire and police departments as well for those retirees. So that's certainly a high point, and I want to thank Senator Kaine, who's been a co-prime with me on several bills that companioned in the House to advocate for this cost of living increase. Those 55,000 some individuals that worked in our public school system and the state government system all deserve to live and retire with dignity, and unfortunately, because of this long overdue increase, that has not been the case. But this certainly is the high point of this legislation. I also want to bring up that one of the provisions in the bill allows for our first responders to have an increase in amount of the loans that they can take out. This EMS and fire loan services program needed an increase in terms of what these loan amounts could be borrowed for, and it cost a lot of money to build a firehouse or a garage for ambulances, and the amounts were well below the level that they could even come half the cost. So having our first responders and having these massive shortfalls in funding for vital life-saving resources and the cost of readiness, this will help. It is not a complete fix, but this is certainly a step in the right direction. And I want to thank everyone who helped make that happen, because it was a staff effort and a bipartisan effort. I then need to highlight some things that I read late last night and early this morning that I did not catch in my first review of this legislation. There's some policy measures that our other members of the General Assembly legislation combined into this bill, and they're not necessarily identical or completely the same, but they are nonetheless are in there, and with little public input or any time to debate how these measures will be rolled out. But there is a provision in Senate Bill 146 that will directly affect communities across the Commonwealth, specific to what is applied on land in terms of fertilizer. This legislation strips local governments of local control on how this food processing residual, it's called FPRs, if you've never heard of it, maybe not an issue everyone understands or has even read about, but it's a real issue. FPRs are the byproducts and wastewater generated by commercial manufacturing. And because Pennsylvania also frequently accepts out-of-state waste, the risks of applying food processing residuals as fertilizer further increases the risk of hazardous contamination of the groundwater and the soil. So I did see the policy piece, but the final sentence in the legislation really does, it it is preemption on local governments from making their own standards for how and what is contained in fertilizer that is created from FPR. So they can't be more stringent than what the Department of Agriculture determines as the standards for these various substances that are contained in FPRs. I think that that's an important point to mention because it's dumped in a bill with a bunch of things and not everyone may see it at the same time. These communities that have experienced the harmful impacts of FPRs, the threat to the groundwater is specific, especially if you have private well water. And at the same time, the enforcement provisions are woefully inadequate within this legislation. A penalty of only $500 for the first day of a violation and $100 for each additional day does not clean up somebody's contaminated well water. And for a large company that processes these food processing residuals is not a deterrent. It's a manageable operating expense. One of the other problematic measures in this bill is the increase for the PA Sites program by $15 million. These are public dollars being used to grade land, extend utilities, and create shovel-ready industrial sites designed to attract massive private development. This budget deal, which invests in very little, somehow found an additional $15 million to sweeten that deal and prepare land and infrastructure for developers. I really do wish, I thought maybe there was a shot at it last night, but we could find that same political will in this chamber to protect our constituents and our communities from the proliferation of data centers happening as we speak. We could have used this fiscal code to establish real setbacks, enforceable health protections, water protections, noise limits, and a real moratorium while the impacts of hyperscale data centers is still being planned out and studied. We are spending public money to accelerate development while leaving local residents to absorb the consequences. We should not be subsidizing shovel-ready sites for billion-dollar industries, and we should not use this fiscal code to quietly and quickly enact policies that could not withstand an open and transparent legislative process. This is not responsible budgeting. It is a decision to prioritize speed for developers over the safety of residents, state control over local voices, and corporate recruitment over public protection. The elected leaders here, all of us here in the Capitol, people are counting on us to do the right thing, to make the decisions that not just provide economic sustainability for our Commonwealth, but also make sure that families aren't living sick day to day in pollutants next to industrial sites. I encourage, again, we still have time to fix this problem. So if people want to acknowledge the harms of data center development, it would be better to act on this now instead of waiting till we come back in the fall and having how many more proposals already being established without any kind of protections for our constituents and property owners. I urge a no vote. Thank you, Mr. President.